More solving equations.
Justin, go plug in your iPad.
Okay, an identity, the identity property is something doesn't change. There's an additive identity and there's a multiplicative identity. If you've got 2 plus something and you don't want to change what it is, what do you add to the number?
0.
0.
I got that right.
So 0 is the additive identity. And if you multiply 3 times something and you don't want to change what it is, 1.
Raise your hand.
Raise your hand. So 1 is the multiplicative identity. So identity just doesn't change what it is. Now, solve an equation still. We just got done with the multi-step. Now we're going to be doing the ones where there's variable on each side. So, the rules are the same for any equation. Your goal is to get the letter by itself on one side or the other, doesn't matter which side. So somehow you've got to get this one and this one together on the same side. Now it doesn't matter which side you move them to. You'd get the same answer either way.
But if
Myself, I like to keep them positive if I can. So what I would do is I would get this one out of there and get it over there, because since it's a minus, you would do the opposite, add 3x to get rid of it. And then remember, you do the same to the other side. Add 3x to the other x and you get 7x. Now, since I got the x's on the left, I'd want to get the non-x's on the right. So I'd want to move this over there. It's a minus 10, so you would
add 10.
add 10.
Lindsay, are you confused?
Why can't it just stay on that side?
Well, it could.
And it could be like.
I'm skipping a step. It would be 7x minus 10 equals 32, right?
Oh, okay.
And then you have
And then you got to get rid of the minus 10, so you add 10. So I just did that step right away. So it just saves you some time. Move the x's to one side, move the non-x's to the other. So when I take this minus 10 and add 10, do the same to the other side, you get 42 on the other side. And then there's just one thing left. Divide by 7. And you get 6.
I said divide by 7. I was gonna say 7x. I didn't say 5.
Okay? Here, before we solve it, you got to distribute the 2 through. So this would be 2 times 4 is 8x. 2 times positive 5 is positive 10 equals 8x plus 10. Anyone see anything odd there?
It's the same.
It's the same thing on both sides. 8x plus 10, 8x plus 10. Now do you remember what that answer is if that happens?
Many solutions.
Many solutions. The reason why it's many, it's actually called infinitely many, but we can just put many. Because no matter what I put in for x, it's going to be equal on each side. 8 times 2 plus 10 is the same as 8 times 2 plus 10. 8 times 5 plus 10 is the same as 8 times 5 plus 10. So anytime that happens, you get many solutions. Now, sometimes you don't recognize it right away. So you do the same thing. You got to get the x's together. It doesn't matter which way I move them. So if I got rid of this, I would subtract 8x, subtract 8x, and they cancel. 8x minus 8x is 0. 8x minus 8x is 0. And what you're left with is 10 equals 10, which is true, right? So that's many solutions. So you can spot it 2 ways. You can spot it right away that it's the same on each side, or if the x's cancel and what's left is true, it's many. Now this is one,
No solution.
no solution. If I were to move this out of there, it's a plus x, so you'd minus x. They'd cancel. And when you do the same thing there, they cancel too. So you're left with negative 1 equals 7. Does negative 1 equal 7?
Ew.
No. So that's a no solution. So the only time you get a many solution and a no solution is if the x's or y's or whatever letter it is completely cancel off. Now don't get that confused with sometimes people do this. if you're solving this equation, we gotta get rid of the plus 5 first, right? So you subtract 5, and you got 2x equals 0. So what's the answer? I gotta divide by 2, so what does x equal? 0. 0 is a solution. The x didn't cancel, there's still an x in here. They didn't cancel out like here. So just remember, you can get 0 for a solution. A lot of times people see 0 and they think that's not possible, so they put no solution. So here's a multi-step with x's on both sides. So on this left side, we've got to simplify that. Take the 3 and multiply it through, so that'd be 6 minus 3x, and then there's a plus 2x, equals, multiply this through, negative 5x. Negative 5 times positive 2 is negative 10. Now, on this left side, we can combine those two. They're like terms. So the 6 would just stay there. Negative 3x plus 2x, negative 1x, equals negative 5x minus 10. Now we have x's on each side and numbers on each side, so you got to get the x's one side or the other. Again, it doesn't matter which one you move, but I'm going to get that one out of there. It's a minus, so you do the opposite. You add to get rid of it. Do the same to the other x. Negative 1 plus 5 is 4x. So since I got the x's to the left, get the non-x's to the right, which means I want to get this 6 over here with that other number. So what do you do to get rid of it? Minus 6, and you get negative 16. Negative 10 minus 6. So then your last step,
Divide by 4.
divide by 4, and you get negative 4. So here, the quickest thing to do in this one would be to move this over, because then the number is all by itself here. So since it's to get rid of it to the opposite side, you do the opposite. Subtract. 5 minus 6 is negative 1x. So then you just divide by negative 1, and you get negative 33 equals x. Same thing here. The quickest thing to do would be to move this one over, because then the 22 is by itself. To get rid of it, you'd minus 10y, and you get negative 2y. Drop the equal sign down, you're left with 22 there. Divide by negative 2, and you get negative 11. Again, here's a number, it's the only regular number, so get that 9b out of there. It's a plus, so you minus it. B, take away 9b, negative 8b, equals negative 24. So divide by negative 8, and you get 3. Here's where we're going to get an odd fraction. I'd want to just keep that 17 there and get the n's over on the left side. It's a plus 3n, so you minus 3n, and you get negative 5n. So, in order to get rid of the negative 5, divide. And that doesn't divide evenly, so you could just leave it like that. Okay? If you ever get an odd fraction, you can just leave it as an odd fraction. Now, if you did divide it out, that would be negative 3.4, which isn't a bad decimal, so either one would be okay. Here, if I'd want to get this by itself, so I'd want to get rid of this m and get this the regular number by itself. So to get rid of it, I'd minus 13m, and what happens? You get 0, they cancel. No solution, because what's left is not true. The m's completely canceled out, and what's left is not true. Here we gotta distribute it through. Negative 6 times 4 is negative 24. Negative times negative is positive 12x. Equals 12x minus 24. They're the same, it's just in different order. Plus 12x is on each side, and minus 24 is on each side. So if it's the same, many solutions. And you would see that if you move this over here, I'd have to subtract to get rid of it, subtract to get rid of it, and they'd cancel off both sides, and you'd be left with negative 24 equals negative 24, which is true. So it's many solutions. Here, you first have to distribute this negative 2 through this parentheses. So the 15a stays there. Negative 2 times a positive 4 is negative 8a's. Negative 2 times positive 5 is negative 10. That's why it's important that you know what the signs are when you distribute it through, because if you get one sign wrong, the whole problem's going to be wrong. Equals negative 6a. Now on this left side, these two are like terms. So you can combine them. They're on the same side, so you just do the same thing. You don't do opposite. 15 minus 8 is 7a's. Minus 10 equals negative 6a. So the quickest thing to do is to get this number by itself. So get that 7a over to the other a. To get rid of it, I'd minus it. And you'd get negative 13a equals negative 10. So divide by negative 13, and you could just leave it as that. The negatives would cancel, so it'd just be 10/13 equals a. That one you wouldn't want to divide out because you'd get a long decimal. So just leave it as 10/13. Here we got to distribute the 1/4 through. Now this one isn't bad because 1/4 times these numbers are whole numbers. You can use a calculator if you can't do it in your head. 1 divided by 4 times 12. What's 1/4 of 12? 3. What's a fourth of 16? 4. Q. And it's minus. Equals 5q plus 30. So, again, it doesn't matter which side you move them to, but I'm going to get that one over to here. Since it's a minus, I'd add it to get rid of it. And when you add it to the other q, 5 plus 4 is 9 q's. So that means get the non-q's to the left side. To get rid of that plus, you'd minus it, and you get negative 27. So when you divide by 9, you get negative 3.